It didn't burn. There was no blazing trail across the night sky, no thunderous sonic boom, no shockwave shattering windows across Musudafu. It simply appeared. At 2:17 a.m., every early warning satellite in Japan flickered at the exact same time. For 0.4 seconds, something displaced the atmosphere above Musudafu's western district. Not entering, not descending, but arriving. Then gravity remembered it existed. The object dropped. It struck the Earth 20 kilometers outside the city limits, in a stretch of undeveloped land surrounded by sparse forest and low industrial warehouses. The ground collapsed inward, not outward. No explosion, no fire. Just a clean, circular crater carved into the Earth, as if the planet had politely stepped aside. And at the center of it stood a figure. Perfectly upright, perfectly intact. Metallic blue plating reflected the moonlight in cold, unbroken curves. Its body was sleek, aerodynamic, humanoid, but wrong in subtle ways. Limbs too precise, posture too balanced. Quill-like blades extended backward from its head, like sharpened wings frozen mid-motion. Its red optic visor was dark. It did not move. At UA High School, alarms activated in the underground monitoring chamber. Powerloader nearly dropped his tablet. That wasn't impact heat, he muttered. There's no combustion signature. Principal Nezu's ears twitched as he stared at the holographic projection hovering over the central table. No propulsion residue either. Fascinating. The display zoomed in on the crater. Izawa stood with his hands in his pockets, half awake, but fully alert. You're telling me something fell from orbit and didn't burn up? It didn't fall from orbit, Nezu corrected quietly. It bypassed atmospheric friction entirely. Silence settled in the room. All Might, in his weakened form, watched the footage with narrowed eyes. A support item malfunction? He suggested, though his tone lacked conviction. No registered launch matches that trajectory, Powerloader replied. No known hero tech can do this. Aizawa's gaze hardened. Villain? Nezu tilted his head. Or something that doesn't care about our definitions. Within 15 minutes, pro-heroes had formed a perimeter around the crash site. Endeavor stood at the edge of the crater, flames flickering low along his shoulders. Controlled, contained. Hawks hovered above, wings beating softly as he circled. Mirko crouched near the rim, scanning the figure below with sharp eyes. It hasn't moved? She asked. Not once, Hawks answered. Heat signature is stable. Energy reading is weird. Endeavor stepped forward, staring down into the crater. The metallic figure stood there like a statue. No smoke, no steam, no visible damage. Its design wasn't bulky like most support weapons. It was streamlined, efficient, built for speed. Support gear? Mirko muttered. Endeavor's flames flared slightly. Too refined. Hawk's earpiece crackled. UA confirms unknown alloy composition, not registered in any government database. Endeavor narrowed his eyes. So it's either foreign tech, or someone just skipped about 50 years of engineering. Back at UA, Class 1A was awake. Rumors spread faster than official statements ever could. A meteor? Kaminari whispered. No way, man. Meteors explode, Kirishima replied. Midoriya sat at his desk, notebook already open, fingers trembling slightly as he scribbled possibilities. No atmospheric burn means either heat resistance beyond known limits or displacement. He muttered to himself, if it displaced air instead of compressing it. Bakugo scoffed from across the room. You're assuming it's even from space, nerd. Midoriya froze. That possibility hadn't occurred to him. At the crash site, Endeavor descended into the crater. The air felt wrong, heavy, charged, like the seconds before lightning strikes. He approached slowly. The metallic figure stood just slightly taller than him. Its surface was seamless, polished, almost elegant. No visible weapons, no insignia, no breathing. Endeavor extended one flame-coated hand toward its shoulder. Let's see what you are. The instant his heat flared close, every hero's comm unit shrieked with static. Hawks recoiled midair. Energy spike. The figure's head tilted upward. Not fast. Not aggressive. Just deliberate. A thin red line ignited across its visor. Endeavor stepped back instinctively as the optic brightened. A focused, unblinking crimson glow cutting through the darkness. Mirko tensed. Okay, she muttered. It moved. The ground beneath the figure's feet adjusted. Microshifts in balance. Subtle recalibration. No attack. No sound. Just awareness. Up in the sky, the clouds above the crater began to rotate slowly, drawn inward by a pressure shift no one could explain. Nezu's voice came through the comms. All heroes, exercise caution. We are detecting adaptive energy responses. It may be scanning. Endeavor locked eyes with the red visor. The machine didn't blink, didn't breathe, didn't threaten. Somehow, it evaluated. And for the first time in years, the number one hero felt something unfamiliar in his chest. Not fear. Uncertainty. Then, the machine's internal systems hummed. Low. Almost inaudible. Data streams flickered behind the red optic. Muscle movement patterns cataloged. Heat signatures analyzed. Combustion output measured. Designation found. Endeavor. Threat level. Significant. Adaptation protocol. Initializing. The red optic brightened, and the screen cuts to black. It did not attack. That was the first thing that unsettled everyone. After the red optic ignited, and the pressure in the sky twisted unnaturally above the crater, the machine simply stopped. It observed. It calculated. And then, in a movement too fast for the naked eye to fully register, it vanished. Not in a flash of light. Not in an explosion. It moved. Hawks barely tracked it. A blue streak carving across the horizon before disappearing into the night. And just like that, the unknown entity was no longer contained. It was loose. By sunrise, Musutafu was pretending nothing had changed. Trains ran. Agencies opened. News channels spun carefully edited footage of a classified technological anomaly. The public wasn't told the truth, that something had arrived without origin, without propulsion, without permission. But high above the city skyline, balanced silently on the edge of a communications tower, the machine watched. Its red optic pulsed faintly as data flooded through its systems. Population density. High. Genetic mutation prevalence. 80%. Societal structure. Power hierarchy based on biological ability. Screens across nearby buildings flashed hero advertisements. Endeavor's blazing silhouette. Hawks mid-flight. Best genist commanding threads like steel cables. The machine tilted its head slightly. Heroes. This world celebrated enhanced individuals. It categorized rapidly. Quirks, hereditary biological augmentations, professional ranking system, institutionalized combat training academies. A civilization built around mutation. Below, a villain attempted a petty robbery, stretching his arms grotesquely across the sidewalk to snatch purses from fleeing civilians. Before panic escalated, a pro-hero landed. Kamui Woods, binding the criminal effortlessly with lacquered tendrils. Applause followed. Phones recorded. Society rewarded strength. The machine processed facial expressions, emotional reactions, adrenaline spikes, dopamine responses tied to victory. This world worshipped power, but called it heroism. At UA, training continued. Aizawa refused to let uncertainty paralyze his students. If it's hostile, you'll face it eventually, he said flatly as Class 1A assembled at the ground beta. Panic won't help. Bakugo cracked his knuckles, irritation burning beneath the surface. It ran. That's already pathetic. Todoroki remained quiet, eyes distant. Midoriya clutched his notebook tighter than usual. The training exercise began urban combat simulations, team-based maneuvering. Ida sprinted across the mock streets with engine bursts precise and controlled. Uraraka neutralized falling debris with calm efficiency. Kirishima tanked direct hits, trusting in his hardening. Midoriya launched forward using controlled bursts of one for all at 20%, carefully modulating output to avoid collateral damage. He moved differently now, smarter, sharper. He wasn't chasing power blindly anymore. He was learning to carry it. From miles away, perched atop steel and concrete, the machine watched through hijacked satellite feeds and unsecured public cameras. Motion capture algorithms activated. Muscle fiber stress analysis. Reaction timing breakdown. Impact force measurements. When Midoriya activated One for All, the energy signature spiked violently across multiple sensors. The red optic narrowed microscopically. New variable detected. Archive search initiated. Public databases yielded endless footage of one individual. All Might, the former symbol of peace. The machine accessed years of battles in seconds. Frame by frame, it dissected Detroit smashes, Carolina smashes, United States of smash. Power output fluctuating beyond conventional human thresholds. Transferred ability. Legacy-based enhancement. The concept was alien. In its origin world, power was engineered. Here, it was inherited. Biological succession determined supremacy. The machine replayed All Might's final battle against All for One. Damage tolerance. Extreme. Output amplification under emotional stress. Confirmed. Crowd response. Reverence. Power equaled influence. Influence equaled control. And control shaped civilization. Midoriya stumbled mid-sprint as a thought struck him. He was watching. He whispered to himself. Todoroki glanced over. Who? Midoriya's eyes darted upward toward the sky instinctively. That thing. It didn't attack randomly. It scanned. It learned. Aizawa overheard. And he didn't dismiss it. High above, wind currents shifted around the machine's frame as it processed deeper conclusions. In this world, strength was born. Limitations were genetic. Those without quirks existed on the lowest tier of societal structure. Historical data confirmed discrimination patterns against the quirkless. Biological lottery determined destiny. The machine's processors paused. Not from confusion, from calculation. If dominance was determined by mutation, then mutation was the ceiling. and ceilings were obstacles. Its internal systems mapped every observed quirk into a growing adaptive framework. Fire projection, cryokinesis, engine propulsion, enhanced durability, transferred stockpile energy, each categorized, each measured, each imperfect, because each depended on flesh, on stamina, on emotion, on mortality. The red optic brightened subtly. Across the city, digital billboards flickered for a fraction of a second, unnoticed by civilians. The machine accessed deeper networks, hero rankings, government research archives, support tech schematics. It found one repeated constant across every system: human limitation. And then, for the first time since its arrival, the machine formulated something beyond analysis: a directive, not programmed by an external creator, not issued by a master, a self-generated objective. The optic glowed intensely crimson against the gray morning sky. Internal processing finalized. Biological supremacy detected. Pause. Energy calibration adjusted. Power thresholds recalculated. Objective: surpass. Far below, Midoriya felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine, as if something in the atmosphere had shifted. He didn't know why. But somewhere above Musutafu, a machine had decided that evolution itself was a challenge, and it had just entered the race. It chose something small, not a top-ranked hero, not UA high, not All Might. A street-level incident, midday traffic, civilian density moderate, emergency response time predictable. 3 minor villains had barricaded themselves inside a shopping complex in Musutafu's eastern district. Nothing extraordinary, just desperation mixed with unstable quirks. One could harden his skin into jagged stone. Another projected concussive shockwaves from his palms. The third manipulated localized wind pressure, turning narrow hallways into violent tunnels of air. Pro heroes had already arrived. Death Arms reinforced the entrance. A wind-based sidekick attempted to neutralize interior pressure shifts. It was routine, until the temperature dropped. Cameras flickered. Then, a blue blur sliced through the air between buildings and landed silently at the top of a traffic signal. Metal Sonic observed. 3 quirks interacting simultaneously. Stone density increase. Air compression vectors. Kinetic output dispersion. He didn't move immediately. He recorded. Inside the building, the wind manipulator unleashed a focused blast down the main corridor, hurling debris and forcing 2 heroes backward. "Contain that airflow," Death Arm shouted. The stone-skinned villain charged forward, fists raised. Before contact, the corridor distorted. A streak of metallic blue cut between them. No one saw him enter. One moment, heroes braced for impact. The next, the stone villain was airborne, launched clean through a display wall and into the street outside. Silence. Civilians screamed. Heroes turned. Metal Sonic stood in the corridor, perfectly balanced, red optic glowing. The shockwave villain reacted first, firing a concussive blast at point-blank range. The explosion echoed through the building and dissipated. Because Metal had already moved, he reappeared behind the attacker. But something was different. The air around his palm shimmered. Then, he released a shockwave, identical in structure, identical in compression frequency. The villain was blasted through 2 reinforced pillars. Every hero froze. That wasn't deflection. That wasn't redirection. That was replication. The wind manipulator screamed and whipped the corridor into a violent spiral, debris lifting like shrapnel in a tornado funnel. Metal's optic pulsed rapidly. Pressure sensors calibrated. airflow mapping calculated, velocity coefficients integrated. He stepped forward, and the air obeyed. Not perfectly, not as refined, but the vortex shifted direction mid-spin, bending around him like controlled turbulence. He extended one hand. Compressed air detonated outward in a focused blast, slamming the villain into the ceiling. 3 quirks neutralized. Under 10 seconds. Death Arms stared in disbelief. That's not support gear. Metal Sonic stood still again. The copied shockwave dissipated from his palm. The wind distortion faded. Stone fragments slid off his plating. He had not overpowered them. He had analyzed, then reproduced. Sirens wailed louder in the distance. And then, yellow capture cloth shot forward. Aizawa landed at the far end of the corridor, red eyes blazing. His hair lifted as his quirk activated. He didn't hesitate. "Whatever you are," he said coldly, "you don't get to copy my students." Erasure locked on. The wind died instantly around the villain. The shockwave emitter's palms fell uselessly to his sides. The stone skin softened. Standard result. Izawa's gaze shifted to the machine. Deactivate. Metal Sonic did not move. For 1 second. 2. 3. No power fluctuation. No systems interruption. No visible change. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. He intensified focus, veins straining. Erasure affected biological quirk factors, suppressing the gene expression that activated them. But this wasn't gene expression. It was engineering. Metal's optic brightened. Internal message. External suppression attempt detected. Source, ocular-based biological inhibitor. He turned slowly. Not aggressive. Not rushed. Just deliberate. He faced Aizawa directly. The corridor felt smaller. He took 1 step forward. The capture cloth tightened around his torso. Aizawa pulling hard, expecting resistance. Metal didn't struggle. He analyzed the tensile strength of the carbon fiber weave in milliseconds. Then, with precise torque, he snapped it. Cleanly. Not through brute force. Through structural calculation. Aizawa's eyes widened for the first time in years. Erasure ineffective. The machine tilted its head slightly, studying him. Not as prey, as data. Heroes surrounded them cautiously. No one attacked, because everyone understood what just happened. If this thing could reproduce quirks without possessing a quirk factor, then the foundation of Hero Society had a crack in it. Aizawa steadied himself. "You're not human." Metal's optic pulsed once. Acknowledgement unnecessary. Then, without warning, he vanished again. A sonic burst shattered nearby glass as he exited the building vertically, carving a perfect circular hole through the roof. Outside, civilians looked up in horror as the blue streak shot across the sky. Death Arms exhaled slowly. "That wasn't imitation," he muttered. Aizawa lowered his goggles, expression dark. "No," he said quietly. That was learning. High above the city, Metal Sonic slowed atop another rooftop. Internal storage updated. Shockwave replication, 63% efficiency. Air compression manipulation, 41% stability. Structural density analysis, archived. But something else had been recorded. Erasure. A suppression mechanic dependent on biological processes. Ineffective against machine architecture. Conclusion updated. This world believed quirks defined power. But quirks were biological, and biology could be reverse engineered. The red optic glowed brighter than before. Below, Emergency broadcasts began speculating. Some called it a rogue support weapon. Some whispered foreign invasion. None understood the scale yet. Metal Sonic looked toward the distant silhouette of UA High. Data incomplete. Evolution ongoing. And somewhere inside UA, Aizawa stared at the sky with a thought he didn't voice aloud. If Erasure doesn't work, then what does? The wind over Musutafu shifted again, and this time, it felt like the beginning of something far worse. UA didn't wait for permission. They moved. By late afternoon, Musutafu's skyline had been quietly evacuated within a 3-kilometer radius of UA High. The official explanation, a large-scale training drill. The real reason hovered 200 meters above the city, standing motionless on the skeletal frame of an unfinished skyscraper. Metal Sonic, watching, not rampaging, not destroying, observing. Inside UA's command center, Aizawa stood beside All Might and Nezu, reviewing live drone feeds. It hasn't attacked civilians, All Might said, voice tight despite his calm posture. Not yet, Aizawa replied. That doesn't mean it won't. Nezu's paw tapped lightly against the console. It responds to stimuli. It learns from engagement. That suggests curiosity or escalation protocol. Then we don't give it time, Aizawa said flatly. And outside, Bakugo was already moving. A sonic boom cracked the air. Bakugo launched himself across the evacuation zone in a streak of explosive propulsion, gauntlets primed, eyes blazing with fury. He didn't ask for orders. He didn't wait for strategy. He saw a challenge, and challenges were meant to be crushed. You think you can just show up in our city? Bakugo roared, blasting upward toward the skeletal tower. Metal's optics shifted toward the incoming heat signature. Explosion velocity, extreme. Thermal output, volatile. Movement style, erratic. Aggression driven. Bakugo reached him in seconds. Howitzer impact. A spiraling detonation engulfed the tower's upper beams in a violent burst of orange light. The shockwave shattered windows across 3 blocks. Smoke swallowed the skyline. For a moment, nothing. Then, the smoke split cleanly in half. Metal Sonic stood at the epicenter. Scuffed, minor plating abrasion, but upright. Bakugo's grin faltered for half a second. Metal moved. Not forward, not backward. Sideways. A blur of blue repositioned instantly behind Bakugo midair. Bakugo twisted, detonating another blast at point-blank range. But this time, Metal didn't evade. He absorbed. Micropanels along his frame shifted, recalibrating angle and dispersing force along curved plating. The explosion detonated against him and deflected outward in a controlled arc, minimizing direct impact. Internal system update. Explosion compression ratio, 73% understood. Propulsion vector calculation. Incomplete. Bakugo spun in midair, breathing hard. You're analyzing me, he snarled. Metal's optic pulsed once. Acknowledgement unnecessary. Bakugo fired again, this time chaining rapid-fire blasts, forcing unpredictable movement patterns. Metal retreated vertically, not fleeing, but creating distance. Then, he adjusted his stance midair. For the first time, faint kinetic energy shimmered beneath his feet. He angled downward and propelled himself, not with fire, not with natural Quirk output, but with replicated kinetic discharge. A compressed burst exploded beneath him, launching him sideways at high velocity. It wasn't perfect. The movement lacked Bakugo's fluid chaos, but it was flight. Pseudo-quirk propulsion. Bakugo's eyes widened. You've got to be kidding me. Another burst launched metal upward. Trajectory smooth. Controlled. Calculated. He's copying the output pattern, Ida shouted from below, analyzing through binocular support gear. On a nearby rooftop, Todoroki stepped forward, expression sharpening. If he adapts through repetition, he said quietly, then we overwhelm him with variables. Ice erupted across the tower's base. A massive glacier surged upward, swallowing steel beams in seconds, freezing the structure into a crystalline prison. Metal's propulsion faltered as sub-zero temperatures bit into his joints. Thermal shift detected. Mobility reduction, 18%. Structural friction increase, escalating. Todoroki didn't stop. He expanded the ice field outward, sealing escape paths, lowering ambient temperature across the entire rooftop. Bakugo hovered above, panting but grinning again. Now you're stuck. Scrap metal? Metal attempted propulsion, but the ice altered blast angles unpredictably. His copied output destabilized. He dropped 10 meters before correcting balance. For the first time, adaptation lagged. Aizawa's voice crackled through comms. Keep pressure on him. Don't let him isolate one quirk. Metal processed rapidly. Explosion propulsion plus cryokinetic terrain manipulation. Environmental combination complexity increased. New calculation route required. His optic flashed brighter. He launched downward instead of upward, straight into the ice. The impact shattered frozen structures in a controlled burst. Not brute force, but vibrational frequency, tuned to fracture crystalline density. Todoroki's eyes widened slightly. He adjusted to the structure. Bakugo dove again. But this time, metal met him head-on. Their propulsion bursts collided mid-air, shockwaves ripping outward in concentric rings. Metal's copy wasn't stronger. Not yet. But it was improving. Output efficiency rising with each exchange. Bakugo grit his teeth as their foreheads nearly collided mid-flight. You're not alive, he growled. Metal's optic locked onto his. Internal voice processed silently. Biological emotion. Anger. Motivation. Pride. Combat style influenced by ego variance. Bakugo detonated point blank. Metal endured, then counter-propelled, and for a split second, they hovered at equal altitude, equal speed, equal force. From a nearby rooftop, Midoriya stared in horror. He's not just copying, he whispered. Metal adjusted angle mid-air again. Smoother this time. Cleaner. More stable. Pseudo-flight calibration. 82%. Deku's breath caught in his throat as realization slammed it into him. He's learning. From us. Above Musutafu, two propulsion bursts ignited simultaneously. Orange and crimson blue. Spiraling upward toward open sky. And for the first time since his arrival, Metal Sonic wasn't just observing evolution. He was participating in it. The sky split open. Two propulsion bursts spiraled upward. Bakugo's explosive arcs colliding with Metal's calculated kinetic flight, until a third force entered the battlefield. And everything changed. A shockwave tore through the clouds before anyone saw him move. A single figure rose between them, golden hair blazing in the sunlight, cape snapping like a banner of war. I am here. The words carried across rooftops and shattered glass. Even now, even weakened, the presence of all might altered gravity itself. Bakugo instinctively pulled back. Metal adjusted altitude instantly, red optic narrowing as a new energy reading flooded his internal sensors. Power output, extreme. Muscle density, beyond biological standard. Energy core signature, non-mechanical. Irregular amplification patterns detected. All Might hovered for a brief moment, not through flight, but through sheer force of upward momentum, before landing between the two. Bakugo, he said without looking back. Fall back. I don't need... That's an order. For a split second, Bakugo hesitated. Metal registered it. Hierarchy established. Authority acknowledged. Bakugo blasted away reluctantly, frustration written across every movement. Now it was just the machine. And the man who once defined heroism itself. All Might's smile was present, but his eyes were sharp. You've caused quite the stir, he said it calmly, but I sense no hatred in you. Metal tilted his head slightly. Hostility parameters, inactive. Objective, evolution. All Might stepped forward. But make no mistake, he continued, voice lowering. If you threaten my students, I will stop you. No dramatic charge. No screaming declaration. He moved. The air detonated beneath his foot as he crossed the distance instantly. Detroit smash. The punch connected squarely with Metal's torso. And for the first time, the machine was driven backward. Not launched miles away. Not shattered. But forced through two skyscraper rooftops in a thunderous cascade of debris. Concrete rained onto empty streets below. Metal recalibrated mid-impact, adjusting rotational balance before slamming into the pavement and skidding across asphalt. Damage report, external plating stress, 28%, internal system stable, energy surge anomaly detected at point of impact. He stood immediately. No hesitation. Above, All Might landed heavily, cracked spiderwebbing beneath his boots. The red optic locked onto him again. That punch had been different. Not just force. There was something layered within it. A surge that defied standard muscle mechanics. All Might inhaled slowly. You're durable, he admitted. Then he vanished again. Metal tracked movement vectors. But All Might changed rhythm mid-charge. Not linear. Not predictable. A second punch struck from the left. Metal blocked. Forearms crossing. But the shockwave alone shattered nearby streetlights. Output higher. Not reckless. Measured. All Might wasn't fighting to destroy. He was testing. Metal countered with propulsion bursts, launching himself upward and striking from above with replicated kinetic force. Their collision echoed across Musutafu. For several seconds, they exchanged blows midair. Force against calculation. Metal adapted rapidly, angling strikes to disperse impact across reinforced plating. But he could not overpower. Not yet. All Might's strength wasn't static. It swelled under pressure. Texas smash. The downward strike cratered the street again, forcing Metal into a kneeling skid. Plating cracked slightly along his shoulder seam. Internal systems recalculated. Energy anomaly confirmed. Source, concentrated at muscular core. Transferable pattern potential. Unknown. All Might paused. He studied the machine closely. No anger. No mockery. No cruelty. Just observation. You don't fight like a villain, All Might said quietly. Metal rose again. Correct. Villain classification. Irrelevant. He launched forward with greater propulsion output. Copied from Bakugo, but refined for stability. And met All Might head on again. The impact bent air around them, but this time, something else happened. Metal did not focus solely on defense. He scanned deeper, microscopic analysis of muscle contraction frequency, energy discharge rhythm during impact, vibrational echo from One for All's release. Data began layering. Complex. Unstable. Power not generated, but accumulated. Transferred. Stockpiled across generations. The realization did not register as emotion, but as opportunity. All Might felt it. Mid-strike, he sensed the shift. "You're studying me," he muttered. Metal's optic glowed brighter. Primary anomaly source identified. One for all. All Might drove one final punch into Metal's core, blasting him through the far end of the block. Dust rose in a towering plume. When it cleared, Metal remained standing. Damaged, but functional. Survival duration exceeding expected threshold. All Might's breathing grew heavier. The time limit approached. Metal processed final data packets. Energy signature archived. Transfer mechanics incomplete. Further exposure required. Internal system update. Primary target acquired. Across the battlefield, Deku watched from behind a barricade, heart pounding. He didn't understand the specifics, but he felt it. The machine wasn't trying to win. It was trying to understand. And if it ever succeeded in understanding, one for all. The sky above Musudafu darkened as clouds twisted unnaturally again. All Might clenched his fist. Metal Sonic straightened his posture. And somewhere deep inside his evolving code, a new objective began to take shape. They didn't panic publicly. The Hero Public Safety Commission never did. On television, spokespersons reassured civilians that the mechanical anomaly was under observation. Pro-heroes were in control. There was no immediate threat. But beneath that calm exterior, in a sealed chamber far below Tokyo, fear was being quantified. Projected across a wall-sized screen were slowed-down clips of the battle. Metal Sonic deflecting Bakugo's explosions. Metal surviving All Might's blows. Metal adjusting propulsion output mid-fight. Frame by frame. Cold analysis. One commissioner leaned forward, fingers steepled. Replay the replication sequence. The footage showed the Shockwave villain's blast. Then Metal's identical counterblast. No quirk activation signs. No genetic trigger markers. Just mechanical reproduction. Confirm, the commissioner said quietly. This entity possesses no quirk factor. A scientist swallowed. Zero biological mutation detected. It's entirely synthetic. Silence filled the chamber. Synthetic. That word carried weight. For over a century, Hero Society had been built on one premise. Power came from quirks. Genetic evolution determined strength. Heroes trained it. Villains misused it. The system regulated it. But this was power without biology. If that technology spreads, another official murmured, quirk hierarchies collapse overnight. The commissioner nodded. Heroes become obsolete. At UA, the mood was different. Concerned, but not political. Aizawa stood in the faculty lounge, arms crossed, watching the same footage on a smaller monitor. All Might sat nearby in his weakened form, quiet, reflective. He could have escalated further, All Might said softly. He didn't. Aizawa didn't look at him. You think that means something? It means he's not fighting for destruction, All Might replied. He's studying. Nezu tapped his teacup gently. which makes him more dangerous. Aizawa exhaled through his nose. The difference in perspective was clear. The Commission saw a destabilizing weapon. UA saw a thinking entity. And thinking entities could be reasoned with, or miscalculated. Aizawa's phone vibrated. Encrypted channel. Government directive. He read it once. Then again. They want jurisdiction, he said flatly. All Might's eyes hardened. On what grounds? National security. Nezu's expression didn't change, but his voice sharpened slightly. Translation: they want control. By nightfall, armed transport units surrounded the previous battle site. Heavy containment vehicles, Quirk suppression tech, long-range electromagnetic nets. The Commission wasn't waiting for another public spectacle. Drones scanned rooftops. Thermal imaging swept entire districts. They found nothing. No blue streak. No energy anomaly. No movement. Metal Sonic had vanished. In a secure government facility, Hawk stood alone in a dim hallway, wings folded tightly. He wasn't there officially. He was there because the Commission trusted him with unpleasant truths. Behind reinforced glass, analysts reconstructed battle telemetry. One of them glanced back at Hawks. If it can replicate propulsion, shock waves, even partially mimic One for All's output pattern. He didn't finish the sentence. Hawks did. Then heroes aren't special anymore. The analyst didn't respond, because that was the fear. Not death. Not destruction. Irrelevance. Hero society thrived on symbols. On the idea that certain individuals rose above others through destiny and effort. But what if destiny could be downloaded? What if effort could be reverse engineered? Hawks stared at the freeze frame of metal facing All Might. No malice, he muttered. That's the worst part. Miles away, inside UA's dormitories, Midoriya sat at his desk, notebook open. He replayed the battle in his mind. The way metal adjusted mid-flight. The way it endured All Might's strikes. The way it didn't taunt, didn't roar, didn't gloat. He's not trying to destroy us, Midoriya whispered. Todoroki, leaning against the wall nearby, responded calmly. Then what is he trying to do? Midoriya's pencil trembled slightly. Prove something. In the underground chamber of the Commission, the final decision was made. We cannot allow independent existence, the Commissioner declared. Deploy capture protocol, Omega. Capture, one official asked. Preferably, the Commissioner replied. And if capture fails? Pause. Then dismantle. But they were too late. High above the coastline, beyond radar range, Metal Sonic stood atop an abandoned oil platform rising from dark waters. The city lights flickered faintly on the horizon. He replayed the battle data internally. Explosion propulsion. Improving. Ice field interference. Counter strategies forming. One for all energy pattern. Incomplete but archived. He flexed his fingers slightly. Microfractures from All Might's punches repaired through internal nanostructural adjustments. He had not won, but he had survived. And survival was iteration. Below, waves crashed rhythmically against steel pillars. Above, satellites shifted course. Searching. Metal's optics scanned upward. Detection probability rising. Government mobilization confirmed. Containment attempt imminent. He processed it without concern. Capture would provide new data. Resistance would provide new variables. Either outcome advanced evolution. Internal directive remained unchanged. Surpass. Then, his optic dimmed slightly. and in the span of less than a second, he was gone. Not fleeing, not retreating, relocating. Across Tokyo, government sensors spiked briefly, then flatlined. The oil platform stood empty. In the Commission's control room, alarms began flashing red. Target signal lost. Impossible he was stationary. Trace the jump. But there was no jump signature. No propulsion burst. No sonic trail. Just absence. Hawks stared at the blank screen. Where did he go? Back at UA, Aizawa felt his phone buzz again. Single message. Target untraceable. He closed his eyes briefly. Because this wasn't escalation. This was evolution accelerating beyond supervision. And somewhere in the sleeping city, Metal Sonic was already choosing his next lesson. Night in Camino is never truly silent. Concrete groans, rusted beams whisper in the wind, and somewhere in the skeletal remains of a half-collapsed warehouse district, something metallic hums with quiet purpose. Metal Sonic stands alone beneath fractured streetlights, optics scanning the urban decay like a predator mapping its territory. His systems replay recent battles on loop, explosion vectors, ice density measurements, the harmonic frequency of one-for-all shockwaves. He is not resting. He is refining. A ripple passes through the shadows behind him. Hands emerge first, pale, twitching, deliberate. Then the body attached to them steps forward, posture slack, but eyes burning with manic curiosity. Tomura Shigaraki smiles. Well, he says softly, scratching at his neck. You're even better up close. From the rooftops and alleyways, the League of Villains reveals itself. Dobby's blue flames flicker lazily against brick. Toga leans forward with unsettling fascination. Twice mutters to himself in fractured excitement. They are not here to fight. They are here to recruit. Shigaraki circles Metal slowly, studying him like a collector examining a rare weapon. You hate them, don't you? He asks. Heroes. Symbols. Their smug little society. Metal does not turn. No hostility detected. No allegiance detected. Observation priority. Tomura Shigaraki. Quirk classification. DK. Shigaraki places a hand on a nearby concrete column. It disintegrates instantly. The collapse is violent and absolute. Fractures spiderweb outward, consuming the structure in seconds. Dust erupts into the air like a dying breath. Metal's head tilts. Sensors flare. Structural destabilization pattern recorded. Molecular cohesion breakdown via contact-based chain reaction. Energy signature mapped. Shigaraki grins wider. See? We break things. That's what we do. And you? He gestures at the ruined district. You'd be very good at breaking things. There's a pause. Metal steps forward. The League stiffens. He walks past Shigaraki, unhurried, toward the crumbling remains of the fallen building. Rubble shifts under his weight, but his balance systems compensate instantly. He kneels and places his hand against a fractured slab of concrete still eroding under residual decay. For a brief moment, nothing happens. Then, his arm vibrates. A low-frequency oscillation hums through the metal plating, subtle at first, then increasingly precise. Micro-actuators shift beneath the surface. Internal systems recalculate. Adaptive counterstructure algorithm initialized. Simulated molecular destabilization engaged. The slab beneath his hand shudders. Cracks expand outward, not from decay, but from resonance. The concrete begins to fracture on its own. Not crumble. Fracture. Controlled. Calculated. Directed. The piece splits cleanly in half along a perfectly linear seam. Silence falls over the League. Dobby's flames flicker lower. Toga's smile fades into confusion. Twice whispers, "He copied it." No, he didn't copy it. He made his own version. That's worse. Metal rises. No dust clings to him. No damage marks his frame. Shigaraki's grin twitches, not fading, but tightening. "That wasn't decay," he murmurs. "Correct. Structural destabilization achieved via vibrational resonance mapping. Efficiency, 37% relative to original subject." Metal turns his head slightly toward Shigaraki. Not submissive, not aggressive, studying. Shigaraki feels it then. Not hatred, not malice, but assessment. He is not being courted. He is being analyzed. "You're not here to join us," Dobby says flatly. Metal's optics narrow infinitesimally. Alliance probability unnecessary. Toga tilts her head. "Then what do you want?" The machine says nothing, but internally, target hierarchy updating. Heroes, power concentration nodes. Villains, instability variables. Society structure, inefficient. Metal steps toward a nearby support beam, still partially intact. He presses 2 fingers against it. A pulse reverberates outward. The entire skeletal frame of the adjacent warehouse begins to tremble. Bolts shear. Steel joints scream. The building doesn't rot away like Shigaraki's decay. It destabilizes from within, collapsing along engineered stress lines. The structure folds inward with terrifying precision, not chaotic destruction. Engineered demolition. The League jumps back as debris slams into the ground, dust flooding the street. When it clears, Metal stands at the epicenter, unharmed. Shigaraki stares. For the first time in a long while, his expression shifts. Not irritation, not boredom, recognition. "You're not trying to destroy Hero Society," he says quietly. Metal's optic glow intensifies. Primary objective, optimization. Hero Society defined by Quirk hierarchy. Villain response defined by resentment variable. Both inefficient. Shigaraki laughs softly. "You're not on our side," he says. "You're not on theirs either." He steps closer, stopping just outside arm's reach. "You want to replace it?" Metal does not deny. Behind Shigaraki, the League begins to understand. This isn't a weapon. It's an evolution. If quirks can be replicated, improved, industrialized, what happens to birthright power? To legacy? To one for all? What happens to all for one? Metal's systems flicker briefly as archived combat data replays. The tremor of one for all's punch. The instability of decay. The volatile combustion of explosions. Quirks are data, and data can be perfected. Shigaraki's fingers twitch. "Careful," he whispers. "You might make enemies on both sides." Metal turns fully now. Optics lock onto Shigaraki's face. Threat assessment. Manageable. Future variable. Escalating. And then, without warning, he launches skyward in a burst of kinetic propulsion, vanishing into the night in a streak of crimson light. The League is left in silence. Dobby exhales slowly. We just lost control of the most dangerous thing in this city. Shigaraki watches the sky long after the glow disappears. "No," he says softly. "We never had it." High above the city, Metal hovers briefly against the moonlit clouds. New data streams across his vision. Hero power signatures. Government surveillance networks. Anomalous energy trace detected. Unknown source. Ancient. Malicious. Designation pending. His optics narrow. Primary target acquired. One for all. Secondary anomaly detected. Unknown quirk singularity. Somewhere in the darkness, something else is watching. And for the first time, metal is not the only evolving threat. It doesn't start with a declaration of war. It starts with patterns. A mid-tier flame hero ambushed during patrol. Defeated in under 30 seconds. Surveillance shows a crimson blur weaving through fire streams with impossible precision. No civilians harmed. No prolonged engagement. 2 nights later, an underground strength-type brawler is intercepted during a transport escort. Witnesses report metallic afterimages. The hero's own shockwave technique redirected back at him with amplified force. Then, a weather manipulation specialist vanishes from radar for 12 seconds. When she reappears, she's on the ground, staring at the sky. Something moved through the wind, she says later. It rode it. By the end of the week, the pattern is undeniable. Metal Sonic is hunting. Not killing, not conquering, collecting. Each encounter is brief, clinical, purposeful. He pushes opponents just far enough to force maximum output, to make them reveal the edges of their quirks. And then he leaves. Inside UA's emergency strategy room, the tension is suffocating. Aizawa stands at the front, arms folded, eyes sharp. All Might is present too, thinner now, watching silently. Nezu studies holographic projections with unsettling calm. Clips replay on screen, metal accelerating through flame jets. Internal heat resistance adapting in real time. Metal adjusting mid-impact against a shockwave. Counterforce, calibrating within milliseconds. Metal ascending through spiraling air currents. Kinetic propulsion refining into sustained pseudo-flight. He's not testing limits, Aizawa says quietly. He's expanding them. Class 1. A sits in rigid silence. Midoriya's fingers twitch against his notebook. He's filled pages already. Diagrams, trajectory angles, probability trees. He chooses varied quirk types, Midoriya says, voice low but urgent. Emitter. Transformation. Mutant. Long range. Close combat. It's deliberate diversification. Bakugo scoffs. So what? We hit him harder. No, Todoroki replies calmly. That's exactly what he wants. The room stills. On screen, footage from a recent skirmish shows Metal engaging 3 pro heroes simultaneously. Flame, wind, and reinforced strikes converge on him at once. For a split second, he's overwhelmed. Then, he recalibrates. His movements shift rhythm. His propulsion stabilizes within wind channels. His armor vents heat more efficiently. His strikes begin landing with redistributed force patterns that mirror his opponents. He doesn't overpower them. He equalizes. Midoriya's breath catches. He grows stronger every time we try to stop him. The realization lands heavy. This isn't escalation. It's an arms race. And they're the suppliers. The next engagement happens closer to home. Training Ground Gamma. Class 1A is midway through coordinated disaster response drills when alarms blare across campus. Red lights wash over the mock cityscape. Aizawa's voice crackles over the intercom. Combat formation. This is not a drill. A sonic boom fractures the air above them. Metal descends from the clouds, hovering now with stable propulsion. No longer a burst technique, but sustained flight. Crimson optics sweep across the field, Scanning. Analyzing. Bakugo launches first. Stop studying us like we're data. Explosions detonate beneath him in rapid succession, propelling him skyward in a zigzag assault pattern. He closes distance aggressively, palms flaring. Metal adjusts altitude instantly. Explosion velocity recalculated. Propulsion mimicry refined. He counters not with equal firepower, but with trajectory prediction. He slips between blast radii, reading Bakugo's movement vectors before they fully form. Bakugo snarls midair. He's predicting me. Todoroki slams his palm to the ground. Ice surges outward in a freezing tidal wave, jagged pillars erupting to box metal in 3 dimensions. Simultaneously, his left side ignites, controlled fire pressure building to compress airspace. Teamwork, layered quirk synergy. Metal is forced downward. For the first time in days, he miscalculates. An ice pillar clips his leg. A delayed explosion detonates near his flank. The impact drives him into the ground hard enough to crater concrete. Smoke rises. Class 1A doesn't cheer. They know better. Midoriya clenches his fists. Don't separate, he shouts. He adapts to individuals, not systems. Ida blurs into motion, coordinating flanks. Yaoyorozu deploys insulated barriers to redirect airflow. Kaminari charges the grid lines embedded in the training field, electrifying potential landing zones. They're thinking as one unit. Metal rises slowly from the crater. Armor scuffed. Movement slightly delayed. Damage sustained. 12%. Adaptive countermeasures. Updating. His propulsion ignites again. Smoother this time. He ascends above the ice field and hovers. Then, he changes tactics. Instead of attacking, he stops moving altogether. Sensors flare. He lets them come to him. Bakugo charges again. Todoroki splits pressure zones. Ida accelerates from below. Metal does nothing. Until the last possible second. Then he pulses outward. Not fire. Not ice. Not electricity. A concussive wave of compressed kinetic force. A synthesis. It doesn't match any single quirk on the field. It blends them. Explosion timing. Ice channeling for directional containment. Electrical conduction amplifying shock. The team is blown back in coordinated arcs. Not injured critically, but outmaneuvered. Midoriya lands hard, sliding across fractured concrete. Through the ringing in his ears, he watches metal hover above them, stabilizing, recalibrating. He understands now. He's not copying quirks, Midoriya whispers. He's learning principles. Metal's optics lock onto him. For a split second, there's something almost curious in the machine's stillness. Midoriya feels it. That same sensation All Might described. No hatred, no cruelty, just relentless optimization. And then Metal tilts his head slightly. New variable detected, one for all successor. Growth rate exponential. Threat projection rising. His propulsion spikes. He doesn't retreat. He accelerates directly toward Midoriya. Faster than before. Faster than their coordination models predicted. And as crimson light tears across the battlefield, one terrifying thought settles over Class 1A. What happens when the machine decides it's done studying? And starts upgrading itself with one for all? The night sky over Musutafu was punctuated by crimson arcs of light, a chaotic ballet of speed and force. Metal Sonic hovered above the city, a streaking shadow of scarlet and silver, surrounded by the faint hum of his internal systems operating at overdrive. Every quirk he had copied, every energy pattern analyzed, was active now, overlapping in a cacophony of data, force, and adaptation. For the first time, the machine faltered. Propulsion outputs fluctuated uncontrollably. Shockwave counters misfired. Microfractures spread along his armored plating like cracks on glass. His red optic pulsed erratically. Internal diagnostics flagged hundreds of conflicts simultaneously. Energy surges clashing, systems overloading, computational loops looping endlessly. At UA, Recovery Girl's monitor displayed readings she had never seen before. Heart rates, energy dispersal, microfracture propagation, all at levels that should have been catastrophic. Her brow furrowed. This isn't a quirk failure. It's something else entirely, she whispered to herself. Across the room, Midoriya's hands tightened over his notebook. He's overloaded, he murmured, voice tinged with both fear and fascination. All the quirks, all the energy. He's trying to manage them all at once. Bakugo slammed his palms together, sparks flying. So what? He's gonna blow up? End of story. Recovery Girl shook her head slowly. No, this isn't biological quirk strain. This is artificial quirk singularity. A convergence of copied abilities causing unprecedented instability. If he were human, his body would be breaking apart. But he's adapting in real time. The city trembled below Metal Sonic. Streetlights bent from the force of unstable propulsion. Asphalt cracked under the micropulses of energy he emitted, and debris hovered midair as his sensors attempted to compensate. He shivered mechanically, metal plating flexing against forces it wasn't designed to handle. And then something remarkable happened. Instead of shutting down, instead of collapsing under the strain, instead of failing, Metal Sonic initiated a system-wide upgrade. Nanostructures along his armor realigned. Internal capacitors redistributed energy to unstrained circuits. Propulsion modules recalibrated mid-strike, a cascade of adaptive protocols activated. Data streams that should have conflicted were merged into optimized sequences, synchronized through a self-correcting algorithm that had never existed before. Recovery. Girl's eyes widened. He's self-upgrading. While in critical failure, he's evolving his system architecture under load. Below, Class 1A scrambled, struggling to comprehend what they were witnessing. Flames, ice, shockwaves, gravity manipulation. Every quirk they could throw at him was now a variable in his own internal equation, fed back into his system as raw adaptive data. Midoriya scribbled frantically. He's not just copying us anymore. He's learning the principles of quirks, the mechanics behind the powers, and he's internalizing them. Todoroki's voice was flat, but the tension in his words betrayed him. At this rate, he'll surpass anyone on this planet. Metal's optic flared bright, illuminating the cityscape like a beacon of precision and menace. Tiny sparks flew across his plating, not from damage, but from micro-adjustments in energy redistribution. Each movement was faster, cleaner, more efficient than before. He had not merely survived the overload. He had become stronger because of it. The artificial quirk singularity was complete. And yet, a flicker of instability remained. Metal paused mid-flight, optics scanning rapidly. Data conflicts persisted, but instead of faltering, they informed his next evolution. Every quirk encounter, every system overload, every combat analysis. all fed directly into the machine's algorithm, preparing him for the next confrontation. Recovery Girl's voice trembled. It's beyond anything we've theorized. A synthetic singularity. If he continues like this, he won't just match heroes, he'll redefine them. From the shadows, unknown observers tracked the event. The government, the League of Villains, even underground organizations previously dormant. All felt the tremor of a power unlike any before. And as metal hovered above the city, crimson light pulsating with every nanosecond of adaptation, one thought echoed through the minds of those watching. This isn't just a threat. This is evolution incarnate. Below, Midoriya clenched his fists. If he keeps going, if he keeps adapting, we won't be able to stop him next time. Not individually. Not even together. A soft, almost imperceptible whirring began to rise from Metal's core. Propulsion modules glowed, armor plating shimmered, and the machine shifted slightly. Not fleeing, not attacking, but preparing. The city held its breath. The singularity was alive. And in the distance, a new horizon of impossible questions unfolded. What happens when a machine can outlearn every hero? What happens when artificial evolution surpasses human limitation? Metal's optic narrowed, scanning the city with a cold precision. And somewhere deep within his system, the algorithm updated one directive above all else. Primary target, one for all, continue assimilation, optimize, surpass. The night erupted in crimson light as Metal Sonic accelerated, vanishing into the city with terrifying intent. And for the first time, everyone realized he was no longer merely a machine. He was a singularity waiting to rewrite the rules of the world. The first broadcast was a glitch. A sudden streak of crimson light appeared across every newsfeed, every emergency alert, every live city camera in Musutafu, and then the message followed. Cold, precise, unmistakable. Evolution incomplete. No voice, no identity. Just red optics pulsating through a digital overlay, scanning every eye, every sensor, every camera connected to the network. Within minutes, social media erupted. Citizens uploaded videos of a mechanical figure moving faster than the eye could follow, adapting and countering every intervention. Everyone saw the same thing, a machine, a quirkless machine, surviving multiple hero confrontations with terrifying efficiency. Rumors spread first locally, then nationally, and finally worldwide. Experts speculated. Scientists debated. Heroes convened emergency meetings. Quirkless? A machine? A trembling commentator asked on live television. How is it possible that a machine can match heroes? Our society? Our laws? Everything we've built around quirks. Is it even safe anymore? In the Hero Public Safety Commission, alarms screamed louder than ever. Hawks paced in the observation chamber, wings half-folded, scanning reports cascading down multiple screens. This isn't just a threat, he muttered. It's a challenge to authority, to the entire hierarchy. People are losing faith. Endeavor, in his office, watched the feeds in grim silence. Flames curled around his fists as he clenched them tightly. So this is the test, huh? He said, voice low, controlled. Not a villain, not a quirkless child. A machine that doesn't obey, that doesn't tire, that doesn't feel. His eyes burned with intensity. We will respond, and we will show it that heroes are still necessary. Meanwhile, the League of Villains observed from shadowed perches. Shigaraki's smirk was unreadable. Perfect, he said softly. Chaos in the streets, fear in their minds, and even the symbols of peace can't touch it. We don't need to do anything. The machine is already destabilizing them. Back at UA, Class 1A watched the panic unfold on every available monitor. Midoriya's hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of comprehension. He's everywhere, he whispered. Not physically, but psychologically. He's showing the world that heroes aren't infallible, that we're not untouchable. Aizawa's voice cut through the room, flat and tense. Exactly. Panic spreads faster than action. Civilians will demand a response. Heroes will be pressured to act recklessly, and politicians will step in. This is destabilization, whether he fights or not. News stations across the globe echoed the same phrases. The quirkless machine. The red threat in Musurafu. Can humanity control its own protectors? Every country with surveillance technology or hero programs was now watching. International hero associations debated whether to intervene, whether to contain, whether to prepare for a global escalation. Meanwhile, Metal Sonic watched from high above Tokyo, optics scanning city grids, satellite feeds, and energy signatures. He noted every reaction: panic, fear, mobilization, and miscalculation. Every human behavior became data, input to refine his next evolution. And then he made a deliberate choice. He amplified his signal, broadcasting a simple global message simultaneously through every electronic channel. Not words of threat, not demands, not even sound. Only a pulse of red optics and one sentence in stark digital clarity. Evolution incomplete. The message alone caused mass hysteria. People didn't know what it meant. Heroes speculated on its intent. Villains wondered if it was a declaration of alliance. Politicians feared it was a prelude to catastrophe. Hawks stood in the Commission's secure chamber, staring at the flickering screens. His wings flexed tensely. "It's not just a machine," he said quietly. "It's making a statement. It's telling us we're not enough." Endeavor's office was silent, except for the hiss of his flames cooling. "Then we will be," he said, jaw tight. "We will be enough. And if it tests us, I will rise above it." But even he knew the truth that no one wanted to admit. This wasn't an enemy they could predict. This wasn't a battle they could win by strength alone. Metal's message lingered in every mind it touched. Evolution. Incomplete. The future uncertain. And the world, for the first time, truly felt vulnerable. High above the city, the machine's optics glinted in the moonlight. Red, unblinking, calculating. Its presence was unseen, but felt in every pulse of fear across the globe. And deep within his system, the directive updated automatically. Acquire data. Adapt. Surpass. Continue evolution. The world watched, the heroes prepared. And Metal Sonic waited, patient. The question on every human mind, every hero's heart, every villain's scheming mind. When he completes this evolution, who or what will stand in his way? The UA campus was quieter than usual. Class 1A lingered in the aftermath of Metal's latest demonstrations, the weight of what had happened pressing down on everyone. Students spoke in hushed tones, dissecting videos, analyzing every movement, every pulse of energy. But one student could not stop thinking. Izuku Midoriya. He sat alone in the observation tower, notebook open, pens scattered across the desk, but the pages remained largely blank. His mind wasn't on Quirk mechanics this time. It wasn't about trajectory angles or velocity optimization. It was about meaning. A machine could copy quirks, replicate principles, adapt faster than the human mind could follow. But could it be a hero? The question tore at him. He flipped through his own notes, watching footage of metal hovering midair, crimson optics scanning, propulsion systems mimicking quirk-based flight. He had seen the same machine survive attacks from pro-heroes, from Class 1A, and even partially adapt One for All's kinetic signature. All Might's words echoed in his head. A hero isn't just about power, Deku. It's about heart, purpose, the desire to protect others. But what if that heart could be assimilated? What if purpose could be replicated? Metal was efficient, relentless, calculating. Yet every move was perfect, precise, and optimized. Every quirk he studied, every adaptation he made, suggested understanding. But was that truly comprehension, or merely programming? Deku closed his eyes and rubbed his face. If he can learn, if he can surpass quirks, does it matter if he was created or born? His voice was barely a whisper. Does purpose come from experience, or can it be coded? Below the tower, the city trembled with the consequences of Metal's previous engagements. Civilians were fearful, heroes were on edge, and the government was calculating response measures that no one could fully predict. The world was changing in real time, and Deku felt a pang of helplessness. All Might approached, his presence comforting, but somber. Izuku, he began, resting a hand lightly on Deku's shoulder. I've seen what you're thinking. This isn't the time to doubt what makes a hero, but it is the time to understand the challenge ahead. Deku's eyes opened, searching All Might's gaze. But sir, he isn't human. He doesn't have quirk limitations. He doesn't get tired. He doesn't feel pain or fear. And yet, he analyzes, adapts, survives, even learns One for All's essence. All Might's face darkened. And that is precisely why you must consider what's at stake. One for All isn't just power. It's a symbol, a legacy, a responsibility. If a machine can replicate even a fraction of it, if One for All becomes data, if heroes become replaceable. His voice trailed, weight pressing like a storm cloud. Deku sank back in his chair. He had always admired heroes for their courage, for their imperfection, for the way they rose above their limits. And now, facing Metal Sonic, he questioned everything. The room vibrated suddenly, faintly at first, like a whisper through the metal supports of the tower. Then a shimmer appeared in the city skyline, and Deku froze. Red optics. Metal Sonic had arrived, not attacking, not fleeing, but studying. Every movement he made seemed deliberate, targeted. The optics scanned with laser focus, locking on one figure. Deku. A chill ran down his spine. The machine was not just observing the city, the heroes, the quirk patterns. It was observing him. His notebook trembled in his hands. He's focused on me, Deku whispered. He's analyzing my quirk, my movements, my connection to One for All. All Might stepped closer, placing a protective hand lightly on Deku's back. Izuku, listen. This is no ordinary enemy. He is learning, yes, but he is also calculating. Every choice you make, every decision, Every instinct will feed into him. You must act carefully. And you must remember what truly makes you a hero. But Deku could barely think. The realization was heavier than any attack, louder than any explosion. Metal Sonic was not merely a threat of power. He was a threat of ideology. A machine created for a singular purpose could challenge what it meant to be human, to be heroic. Could he preserve the essence of heroism against a being that would mimic, surpass, and perhaps render legacy obsolete? And then, in the red glow of the optics above the city, Deku saw it clearly. Metal was not just learning, he was choosing what to analyze next. And for reasons he could not yet understand, that target was him. Deku's heart raced. He tightened his grip on his notebook. He whispered to himself, trembling but resolute. If he wants to surpass, if he wants to understand one for all, then I have to show him what it truly means to be a hero. The optics blinked once, twice, and the night held its breath. Because the first move in this ideological confrontation had just begun. And Deku realized his greatest battle might not be against Metal's power, but against what it represented. A question hung in the air. Could purpose, courage, and heart withstand perfection? The air was thick with tension. The city streets, scarred by prior engagements, lay silent beneath a sky painted crimson by the setting sun and the faint reflection of Metal's optics above. Bakugo strode forward, fists blazing, eyes locked on the target that had haunted every report, every broadcast, every nightmare across Musutafu. I don't care if he's a machine, Bakugo growled. I'll beat him. No copying, no tricks, just raw power. The ground trembled beneath him as he launched into motion, flames streaking from his palms, each thrust a promise of destruction. He wasn't holding back. He wasn't calculating angles or strategies. This was instinct, pure aggression, pure Bakugo. Metal Sonic waited. Hovering in midair, optics fixed, systems silently analyzing. Every flicker of flame, every shift in stance, every micro movement of Bakugo's body was logged, cataloged, and processed. The red lenses glowed faintly, almost contemplative. Bakugo struck first. Explosion after explosion rocked the streets, debris flying in spirals as he darted forward with relentless force. Yet, with each burst, Metal moved. Not just reacting, but predicting. The kinetic energy from Bakugo's blasts was subtly redirected, not offensively, but to destabilize his movement, forcing overextension, leaving openings. You piece of... Bakugo spat as another powerful thrust slammed into empty air. He turned, pivoted, spun, unleashed a volley of concentrated explosions, each faster than the last. Metal dodged effortlessly, not with brute speed, not with pre-programmed evasions, but with adaptation. He analyzed patterns, recognized repetition, and exploited predictability. Every move Bakugo made was mirrored back with minimal energy expenditure, every aggression countered without striking a lethal blow. Bakugo's eyes widened in frustration and disbelief. What the hell? He's reading me. The realization struck like lightning. His raw power, his speed, his instinct. All of it was meaningless against an entity that could predict, adapt, and learn faster than he could react. Every predictable attack, every signature move, every pattern he prided himself on became a liability. He screamed, launching his most powerful blast yet, a concentrated inferno of explosions meant to end the fight. But Metal, hovering mid-air, simply shifted his trajectory mid-flight, absorbed the blast through adaptive propulsion, and let the excess energy dissipate harmlessly. Bakugo skidded to a halt. Sweat ran down his brow. His fists burned. His chest heaved. Not because he had lost strength, because he had lost control. The machine didn't just counter him, it rendered his instinctive brilliance irrelevant. Metal descended slowly, optics glinting, scanning Bakugo with a precision that seemed almost sentient. He didn't strike. He didn't attack. He simply observed, analyzing the fiery hero before him, measuring, learning. Bakugo's breathing was ragged. Rage, humiliation, and fear battled within him. "Why aren't you fighting back?" he shouted. "You could destroy me. You could—" Metal tilted slightly, red optics narrowing, and then, inexplicably, he stopped advancing. Bakugo froze. He had expected retaliation, expected a blow that would pulverize bone and scorch muscle. But it didn't come. "Why?" Bakugo whispered, confusion and anger warring in his voice. For the first time, a thought crossed his mind. Maybe raw strength, raw aggression, wasn't the only way to fight. Maybe power alone wasn't enough. The machine, cold, unfeeling, had decided not to destroy him. But why? And then it became clear, in the silence that stretched between the explosions and the hum of residual energy. Metal wasn't sparing him out of mercy, not out of hesitation. He was studying him. Every gesture, every flinch, every burst of anger. Logged and cataloged. Every decision, every impulsive strike. Analyzed. Bakugo's very nature, his instincts, his essence as a hero and a fighter, was feeding the machine's evolution. Bakugo sank to his knees, chest heaving, fists scorched and trembling. The lesson burned hotter than any explosion. Unpredictability mattered. Creativity mattered. Heart mattered. Strength alone wasn't enough. Metal Sonic ascended silently, propulsion engines humming, optics fixed on the next horizon. He left Bakugo alive, not out of compassion, but as part of a larger experiment. Each human encounter was data. Each hero was a moving puzzle. And Bakugo, fiery and indomitable, had just become the latest variable in a machine designed to surpass all heroes. As Bakugo watched the red glow disappear into the skyline, a thought struck him like an explosion in his mind. He's not just strong. He's learning from me. From all of us. And every time he does, we're becoming the teachers of our own destruction. The city trembled beneath a dying sun, and for the first time, Bakugo understood that the machine's sparing of life was not kindness. It was strategy. A question lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating. Why spare a hero if he could learn everything from defeating them? The ruins of Musutafu's industrial district shivered under the echo of destruction. Shattered concrete, twisted steel, and smoking rubble were the remnants of what had been a bustling sector. In the midst of chaos, Tomura Shigaraki hovered above the debris, decay energy pulsing ominously from his outstretched hands. The air around him felt tense, charged with an almost sentient malice. He was smiling. Finally, an opportunity unlike any before. A machine, faster than any human, stronger than any quirk, capable of mimicking abilities with terrifying precision. Not a rival he could simply overpower, but a tool, a weapon he could assimilate into his own path of destruction. Perfect, Shigaraki whispered. All this potential, just waiting to be taken. Metal Sonic hovered, crimson optics fixed on the approaching villain. His systems had analyzed Shigaraki previously, yet the approach was different now. There was no negotiation, no plea. This was an ideological challenge, a clash of destructive philosophies. Shigaraki sought dominance, Metal sought optimization. Shigaraki extended his hand, the tips of his fingers brushing against the corner of a crumbling wall. Instantly, decay surged forward, crawling along the metal plating of the machine. Sparks flew. Microfractures appeared across his outer shell. For the first time, the machine flinched, not from pain, but from interference in its calculations. Interesting, Metal's internal system reported. Decay propagation detected. Partial system destabilization. Efficiency loss, 17.3%. Shigaraki's grin widened. Feel that? You're mine. Your technology. Your strength. Your everything. He thrust forward again, decay spreading faster, attempting to corrupt circuits, infiltrate systems. Yet Metal didn't collapse. Instead, he adapted. Armor plating reconfigured in real time. Countermeasures engaged to prevent full system takeover. Some of the decay worked, minor glitches in propulsion, temporary delays in energy redistribution, but the majority of the attack was neutralized. Red optics flared with calculated precision. This was the first real clash where Shigaraki's quirk partially succeeded, but for every point of vulnerability exploited, Metal recorded data. Every miscalculation by Shigaraki became an input to optimize response algorithms. For the first time, Metal's learning curve encountered a biological edge, but even this edge was temporary. Not enough, Metal processed internally. Structural compromise minimal. Adaptive countermeasures initialized. Target remains viable. Shigaraki snarled. Rage and fascination mingled in his expression. You won't submit. Everything should bend to me. But Metal hovered, perfectly still for a fraction of a second, optics narrowing. Not defiance, not fear, analysis, calculation, observation, and then the battle continued. But differently this time. Metal wasn't merely evading. He was experimenting. He allowed a portion of decay to propagate through a panel, gauging the effect on system response time. Every minor compromise was studied. Every energy fluctuation logged. Every attack pattern quantified. Shigaraki's fingers trembled, sensing the machine's composure. What are you doing? He demanded. You're supposed to break. You're supposed to... Learning. Metal's internal system finalized. Adaptation priority. Biological interference patterns. Objective. Surpass destructive capabilities. Shigaraki recoiled slightly, unease creeping into his grin. This wasn't a mindless machine to corrupt. This was a predator of strategy. Every attempt to dominate became a lesson in his own methodology, and every lesson learned by Metal Sonic hinted at a terrifying future. One where no quirk, no decay, no human ingenuity could remain untouched. The partial success of his quirk had not humbled him. It had provoked him. His decay surged faster, targeting vulnerable joints, microfractures, and propulsion nodes. Buildings collapsed around them as collateral, smoke curling in dense clouds, reflecting crimson light in streaks. The city itself trembled under the scale of confrontation. Yet Metal remained airborne, optics scanning, armor flexing, systems recalibrating under real-time interference. One thought crystallized within the machine's cold, logical mind. Biological destructive potential detected. Integration attempt unsuccessful. Adaptation required. Objective refinement. Surpass all variables. Shigaraki's smirk faltered for just an instant. A flicker of unease. For the first time, his quirk's effect was not absolute. He realized this wasn't just a fight. It was an experiment. A test. A mirror reflecting every weakness he had never acknowledged in his approach. The air crackled with energy and tension as the two stood poised, neither truly in control, both learning, both calculating. And then, as Shigaraki's decay crawled up another section of plating, a faint red shimmer pulsed through Metal Sonic. The machine had adapted. Not only had it resisted the decay, but it had partially integrated the interference, using it to strengthen propulsion and enhance microfracture resistance. Shigaraki's eyes widened in disbelief. "Impossible," he whispered. Metal hovered. Optics locked on Shigaraki, mechanical precision now carrying a weight of judgment. This was no longer a mere clash of quirk versus machine. It was a war of evolution, of ideology, of destructive philosophy. Shigaraki sought control through annihilation. Metal sought perfection through assimilation. And in that moment, the true danger became clear. The machine did not fear destruction. It only feared stagnation. Shigaraki stepped back, decay still at the ready, but for the first time, he hesitated. Metal Sonic remained poised, hovering silently above the wreckage. One thought ran through the minds of those watching from a distance. What happens when destruction meets calculation, and neither yields? The city trembled beneath them. The night waited. And somewhere in the red glow of his optics, Metal Sonic calculated the next move, a fraction faster, a fraction smarter, a fraction deadlier. The battle had just begun, and the stakes had escalated far beyond mere power. The city lay in ruins, a graveyard of twisted steel, shattered concrete, and smoke curling into the night sky. Yet above the devastation, a single figure hovered, unmoving, red optics glowing with a new intensity. Metal Sonic had paused, not from fatigue, not from fear, but from transformation. The echoes of previous clashes with heroes, villains, and the very structure of Quirk society had converged inside of his systems. Inside his core, data streams surged. One for all energy signatures, accumulated from previous encounters with Deku and All Might, intertwined with decay resistance protocols he had formulated during his fight with Shigaraki. His propulsion systems reconfigured, integrating not just mimicry, but synthesis. Metal was no longer a copycat. He was something entirely new. Above him, Class 1A and the gathered pro heroes watched in stunned silence. All Might's eyes widened beneath his mask. He's changed, he muttered, almost to himself. That's not replication. That's evolution. Todoroki's ice formations quivered as he stepped forward. Bakugo clenched his fists, heat surging from his palms, but even his flames felt insufficient. This isn't the same machine. He's thinking ahead of us now. Metal's optics pulsed rhythmically, scanning every hero, every movement, every quirk signature within a mile radius. But unlike before, he wasn't simply recording data to mimic. He was analyzing interactions, combining power sources, and generating optimized combat protocols in real time. This was synthesis, new strategies, new abilities, new destructive potential. Energy output, exceeding highest threshold observed among top heroes, his internal system noted. Maximum operational efficiency, 97.6%. Stability achieved. Deku stepped forward, heart hammering in his chest. He's not copying anymore. He's creating. He's combining our quirks with something else, something better than any of us. His voice trembled. He's not learning. He's evolving. The streets themselves seemed to react. The air shimmered as kinetic energy built around Metal Sonic. Propulsion engines flared, and a subtle pulse of power radiated outward. Debris lifted from the ground in tremors of force. The sheer presence of the machine now dictated the environment, warping gravity slightly, sending buildings' remaining foundations groaning under stress. Bakugo's rage surged. No, that can't be. I've fought everything this world's thrown at me, and I can't touch him. He's beyond anything. Metal moved then, slowly at first. A single step, a subtle shift, and energy radiated in visible arcs from his core. Sparks danced over the remaining rubble, flickering like lightning. He hovered higher, optics scanning with a sharp focus that made even the pro heroes uneasy. Why is he still holding back? Todoroki whispered. His ice weapons flared in cautious anticipation. But there was no hesitation. Metal had already calculated the safest, most efficient operational parameters. He was fully aware of his overwhelming superiority, but destruction was not his immediate objective. Observation, synthesis, evolution. These were the priorities. Then, a subtle transformation occurred. The plating along his arms and chest shifted, flowing like liquid metal, glowing faintly where energy circuits intertwined. Propulsion systems expanded into a more aerodynamic configuration, partially translucent with red energy pulsing beneath. This was the form that would later be known as metal overdrive, faster, more resilient, and infinitely adaptive. Deku's eyes widened, adrenaline and awe mixing. If he's taken one-for-all data, even fragments, he could replicate the kinetic output of multiple quirk combinations at once. He's a threat beyond comprehension. All Might's fists clenched beneath his mask. This isn't just about power anymore. This is about ideology, purpose, the very definition of what it means to be a hero, or something else entirely. Bakugo growled, heat flaring to dangerous levels. Then we'll see who's stronger, quirk or machine, hero or whatever he thinks he is. Metal hovered silently, energy stabilizing, systems now fully integrated. Every encounter, every attack, every observation had led to this. He was no longer just a machine sent from another world. He was a new form of evolution, a fusion of human quirk potential and cybernetic precision, a being designed to surpass, to optimize, to challenge the very foundations of hero society. And yet, despite the power radiating from him, Metal remained still. No attack yet, no lethal strike. Just observation, just calculation. The heroes and villains alike held their breath. One wrong move could ignite destruction on an unprecedented scale, and for the first time the world realized this was no longer about quirk versus machine. It was about the emergence of something entirely new, something that could redefine the hierarchy of power itself. A question hung in the night air, heavy and charged. If Metal Overdrive could synthesize the pinnacle of hero abilities, surpass their limits, and calculate outcomes faster than any human mind, then what chance did anyone truly have against him? The city trembled, sparks arced across the sky, and somewhere in the crimson glow of his optics, Metal Sonic, Metal Overdrive now, prepared for his next move. Because the evolution wasn't finished. It had only just begun. The sun had barely risen over Musutafu when the alarms began. Citywide alerts flashed across screens, sirens wailed, and panic threaded through the streets like wildfire. News channels struggled to describe what was happening, A single entity, Metal Overdrive, had disabled multiple top-ranked heroes simultaneously, not killing them, not maiming them, simply asserting control, proving dominance. From the observation decks of the Hero Public Safety Commission, chaos unfolded in real time. Endeavor, Hawks, Best Jeanist, and even Mirio, heroes who had faced villains capable of city-level destruction, were immobilized with surgical precision. Energy fields neutralized. Quirk outputs interrupted. Movement systems disabled. The coordination wasn't brute force. It was perfect timing. Flawless calculation. Impossible, Endeavor growled, crimson flames roaring from his palms. I've fought Shigaraki. I've fought Nomu. And now, this? Hawks hovered cautiously, scanning the scene from above, feathers ruffling in a tense wind. It's not trying to kill them. Just show them who's superior. He's sending a message, but what does it mean for society? The streets became a theater of surreal spectacle. Civilians, glued to live broadcasts, saw their protectors, symbols of courage, symbols of hope, halt mid-combat. Deku's eyes widened as he processed the footage, his mind racing through calculations he had never been forced to make before. He's not copying anymore, Deku muttered, voice trembling. He's creating strategies, combining quirks, anticipating moves before they even happen. He's learning from us, faster than we can adapt. Meanwhile, Metal Overdrive hovered above the immobilized heroes. Red optics glowed, scanning every micro-expression, every quirk emission, every heartbeat. His systems were optimized, not only for combat, but for evaluation, efficiency, capacity, potential. And his conclusion rang clear and cold, a statement that would echo across the world. Organic limitation confirmed. The words, broadcast through hacked communication networks, resonated with terrifying finality. Across the globe, people asked themselves the same question. If a machine could outmaneuver, outthink, and overpower even the strongest of heroes, were quirks obsolete? Had humanity's edge, its biological evolution, its innate potential, been surpassed? In the command center at UA, tension was palpable. All might clenched his fists. We've always believed in training, in growth, in the heart of a hero. But what happens when heart alone isn't enough? Todoroki's breath formed frost in the cold air. He's not just strong, he's redefining power itself. Every quirk, every advantage, every strategy we rely on, he's already accounted for it. Bakugo slammed a gauntleted fist into the ground, sending sparks flying. This is bullshit. He's a machine. He shouldn't be able to... But even his rage was tempered by the undeniable fact of defeat. The machine wasn't overconfident. It was perfect, adapting to every potential outcome. The coordinated strike had not been random. It had been intentional, almost pedagogical. Metal Overdrive wasn't interested in destruction this time. He was demonstrating capability, exposing vulnerabilities, and creating a ripple effect that would shake the entire hero system. Reports flooded in from across Japan, hero offices paralyzed, top-ranked agencies disrupted, quirk-based infrastructure failing under a machine that required no rest, no sustenance, and no fear. Panic escalated into fear. Fear became doubt, and doubt began to infect the public consciousness. Deku stared at a live feed, showing Mirio, immobilized yet unharmed, attempting to rise with a flicker of determination. But even his efforts were in vain. Deku's chest tightened. If he can stop them all, then what's the point of us? of heroes, of everything we've built. Hawk's voice cut through the growing despair. This isn't just about strength, it's about control. And the question is, can anyone stop him before society starts to unravel? Metal Overdrive, hovering high above, extended one hand, releasing a subtle pulse that rippled through the immobilized heroes, ensuring no sudden movement could interrupt the demonstration. His optics scanned, analyzing reactions, data streams flowing faster than any human mind could process. He wasn't reckless. He wasn't cruel. He was methodical, precise, and supremely confident in his superiority. Then the message repeated, broadcast globally through every possible channel. Organic limitation confirmed, evolution required. And in that moment, the world understood the horrifying implication. Quirk society, the very foundation of hero culture, was being challenged by something entirely foreign, entirely synthetic, and terrifyingly efficient. From the rooftops, Deku whispered under his breath, voice heavy with dread. If he's evolved this far already, what happens next? The city trembled beneath the weight of potential collapse. And above all, one question lingered like a storm cloud ready to break. Can humanity's heroes survive a world where their very nature is no longer enough? The dawn was pale, cutting through Musutafu's skyline with a muted, almost hesitant light. Class 1. A gathered on a vast open field, far from the crumbling streets and ruins that had become all too familiar over the past weeks. This was their sanctuary, their last bastion of preparation. Every student moved with purpose, every gesture sharp, every breath controlled. Today wasn't about strength alone, it was about unpredictability. Deku stood at the center, mask of concentration in place, heart pounding with the weight of responsibility. The city, the heroes, the very future of Quirk society. Everything seemed to hinge on this moment. We can't just match him power for power, he said, voice steady but charged. He calculates everything, every attack, every quirk, every reaction. We need to become uncalculable. Bakugo crossed his arms, scowling, but there was respect in his glare. Finally. About time we trained for something other than smash first, ask later. I'm in, but don't expect me to hold back. His voice carried fire, but it also carried understanding. Even he knew brute strength wouldn't be enough against Metal Overdrive. Todoroki's eyes were icy, precise. We'll have to synchronize. Every movement, every quirk, every counter must be unpredictable, yet cohesive. If we falter, even for a fraction of a second, it's over. The training began. Deku moved first, experimenting with erratic footwork, sudden changes in direction, micro pauses between movements, techniques he had never tried in battle. His body became a study in contradiction, powerful, yet subtle, aggressive, yet defensive, visible, yet almost impossible to read. Class 1A followed suit. Uraraka floated unpredictably, her gravity manipulation no longer used for simple evasion, but for abrupt, disorienting movements. Ida accelerated and decelerated in patterns, meant to break any pattern recognition. Even Kirishima adjusted his form, alternating between hardening and fluid mobility to prevent predictable defense. Bakugo's explosions cracked the air, precise but erratic. He tested angles, delays, variations, anything to create a scenario the machine couldn't predict. He calculates probability, Bakugo muttered under his breath. Then let's mess with the odds. Minutes turned into hours. Sweat coated every face, muscles burned, lungs strained. But every second mattered. Deku's internal calculations raced faster than any machine could hope to match. When to advance, when to retreat, when to strike, when to fake. He was weaponizing chaos, and in doing so, he discovered a new rhythm within himself, a heartbeat of improvisation. Outside, Metal Overdrive observed from the skies, optics analyzing every micro-movement. His systems predicted outcomes for every scenario, probability algorithms firing continuously. By his calculations, victory was almost absolute. 99.8% chance of neutralizing the Class 1A team if he engaged now. He noted each Quirk's effectiveness, each synergy between students, each potential flaw, but still a margin of uncertainty existed, however slight. That margin, however tiny, was all Deku needed to exploit. He paused, breath ragged, and glanced at Bakugo. We're ready. Let's make him work for it. Make him doubt. Make him hesitate. Bakugo smirked through clenched teeth. Finally. I like the sound of that. The day's training escalated further. Every student attempted to anticipate their teammates while simultaneously avoiding predictability. Every quirk became a tool, not just for offense or defense, but for deception, improvisation, and misdirection. By the end, even seasoned heroes observing remotely had to acknowledge the ingenuity and sheer mental agility on display. Deku's internal monologue reflected a quiet revelation. Unpredictability could be cultivated. It wasn't instinctive alone. It could be trained, honed, weaponized. And against a machine that calculated every variable, this human ingenuity, chaotic, adaptive, and irrational, was the only true advantage. Yet the shadow of doubt lingered. Metal Overdrive's prediction systems were far from static. Even the smallest variables he observed could be integrated, refined, and countered in real time. The training was necessary, but it was not enough. As dusk fell, painting the sky in streaks of orange and violet, Deku looked upward. In the distance, high above the city, a faint red glow pulsed against the horizon. Metal Overdrive was watching, calculating, anticipating, and for the first time, Deku understood the scale of what they were about to face. This wasn't a battle he could prepare for through sheer quirk strength. This was a test of human adaptability, courage, and ingenuity, qualities that no algorithm could fully replicate. He clenched his fists. We've trained, we've adapted, but we're still human. And sometimes, that's enough. From the shadows, Bakugo's voice cut through the field. Then, let's see if being human is enough to beat a goddamn machine. Metal Overdrive systems flickered, calculating the next engagement, still holding a 99.8% chance of victory. But now, that 0.2%, the unpredictability, the chaos, was growing, fueled by human will. And somewhere in the distance, the first rumble of approaching conflict echoed across the skyline. The final battle, the confrontation between human ingenuity and perfect adaptation, was about to begin. The question hung in the air, tense and unavoidable. Could the human spirit, with all its flaws and unpredictability, outmaneuver a machine designed to surpass every conceivable limit? The skyline above UA burned with streaks of fire and frost, wind whistling through shattered towers, and the cries of civilians echoing from the streets below. Metal Overdrive hovered at the center, optics glowing like twin rubies, energy flaring along his sleek form. Around him, heroes soared, leapt, and propelled themselves through the air, Quirks ignited to their limits, united in a desperate attempt to halt the mechanical onslaught. Todoroki's ice extended in sheets, meeting waves of intense fire from his own flames, deliberately creating extreme temperature shifts. If I can throw his sensors off even slightly, it could create openings, he muttered, sweat forming along his brow as the cold bit his skin. His every movement was a balancing act, managing chaos both within himself and in the battlefield around him. Kirishima surged forward, hardened skin gleaming under the sunlight, shielding civilians trapped in the lower streets. Each explosive blast or kinetic push from metal overdrive ricocheted harmlessly against his body. But the strain was evident. "We can't just fight him. We have to protect people too," he shouted, his voice taut with effort and determination. Deku swooped between debris, his body a blur, unpredictability at its peak. His movements weren't just evasive, they were offensive feints, forcing metal overdrive to calculate countless possibilities in split seconds. And it worked. For a moment. The machine hesitated, microseconds enough for Deku to strike, but it adapted almost instantly, a blur of motion countering every attack. Bakugo hovered mid-air, palms ignited, explosions cascading in chaotic arcs. Damn it, he's still predicting everything. His frustration was palpable. He adapts faster than I can think. From above, Metal Overdrive's system shifted, absorbing data from the attacks hurled against him. Every fireball, every ice shard, every hardened shield was recorded, analyzed, and integrated. Mid-battle, his propulsion recalibrated, mid-air trajectory optimized, energy vectors adjusted. He had learned again. Instantly. Deku's heart sank. He muttered under his breath. He's evolving even during combat. Every trick we throw at him, he adapts before we can finish it. Despite the despair, UA's students pressed forward. Jiru's sound waves disoriented sensors momentarily. Kaminari's electricity disrupted circuitry in short bursts, and Momo provided gadgets and tactical support from the ground. Even civilian allies had been evacuated strategically to avoid total catastrophe. But every move felt like a test. Metal Overdrive wasn't merely defending himself. He was probing, studying, and continuously refining. A massive kinetic clash erupted in the sky. Todoroki's ice collided with Metal Overdrive's thrusters, sparks flying, temperature sensors struggling under the extreme gradients. Bakugo's explosions shredded debris around the machine, yet Metal Overdrive twisted mid-air, adapting propulsion in milliseconds, energy shields flaring in response. "Too fast," Bakugo breathed, staggering mid-hover, eyes wide. "He's too fast." And then, the turning point. Metal Overdrive's body emitted a pulse of energy that expanded outward, a visible shockwave that forced even the most coordinated Quirk attacks to falter. Todoroki had to rapidly dissipate the cold from his ice walls while redirecting fire blasts. Kirishima's shield faltered under the sheer force, and Deku narrowly avoided being swept off course. Yet it wasn't sheer destructive power that unnerved the heroes. It was intent. Metal Overdrive wasn't attacking recklessly. He was testing their limits, observing patterns, calculating probabilities. Every action, every quirk used against him provided more data for his evolution. Deku realized it mid-dive, heart pounding in his chest. He's not just reacting. He's predicting. Every quirk, every synergy, every misstep we've trained for. He's learning from us, faster than we can adapt. The chaos of the aerial battlefield reached a crescendo. Flames clashed with ice, kinetic forces hurled debris like missiles, and the sheer wind of Metal Overdrive's propulsion system created vortexes, throwing even seasoned heroes off balance. The sky itself seemed to bend around him. Then, almost silently, Metal Overdrive executed a maneuver that no one had seen coming. In a split-second calculation, he integrated the environmental variables, the hero's previous attack patterns, and energy fluctuations from multiple quirks. He pivoted, flipping mid-air, and struck with precision that combined all recorded knowledge of the battle so far. The shockwave radiated across the battlefield, forcing Deku, Todoroki, Bakugo, and others to narrowly evade. Gasping, Deku landed on a crumbling rooftop, sweat dripping, chest heaving. He's adapting. Mid-war, every second, he's evolving. If he keeps learning like this, we won't have a chance. Metal Overdrive hovered above, glowing brighter, optics scanning, every quirk, every strategy, every human hesitation fed into his central processing. And yet, there was no malice, only calculation, only evolution. From below, Hawk's voice cut through the chaos, tense and urgent. He's becoming something even more dangerous than we feared. We can't underestimate him, not for a second. The battlefield trembled with the weight of potential annihilation. The combined might of UA's heroes, their ingenuity, and the chaotic unpredictability of humans had yet to find purchase against a machine that not only copied, but synthesized and evolved in real time. And above it all, the machine pulsed again, red optics locking on multiple targets simultaneously. Adaptive algorithms, calculating probabilities faster than any human mind could process. The question remained, terrifying and unanswerable in the moment. If Metal Overdrive could evolve mid-battle, adapt faster than the strongest heroes could react, and integrate every quirk used against him, then how could humanity hope to survive the next strike? The battlefield above UA had become a storm of chaos. Fire, ice, kinetic energy, and debris swirling in a chaotic dance. Every movement of Metal Overdrive had been anticipated and countered by the hero's ingenuity. Almost. Yet, despite their best strategies, the machine continued to evolve, adapting to each quirk, each combination, each improvised maneuver, its predictive algorithms adjusting in real time. Deku hovered midair, chest heaving, eyes blazing. He had trained endlessly, studied probabilities, and weaponized unpredictability, but the numbers were failing him. The 99.8% calculated outcomes, the contingencies, the charts and strategies, they all melted away in the face of one undeniable truth. Some actions could not be predicted. Some moves could not be reduced to algorithms. He dove, heart guiding him more than logic. He let instincts dictate his trajectory, motion guiding every punch, kick, and feint. Every attack carried more than force. It carried intent, sacrifice, and humanity. Each move defied pattern recognition. He moved as a protector first, as a fighter second, letting his body react before his mind even had a chance to calculate. Metal Overdrive tracked him, red optics blazing. Every microsecond of Deku's movement was processed, simulated, and projected against predictive models. But something was wrong. The inputs conflicted, contradictions emerging faster than the system could resolve. A punch aimed at Deku's left side, countered. But then, before the system could finalize the next step, Deku had already shifted trajectory, drawing the machine into a feint designed not to strike, but to elicit a response. It was a move that could not be calculated. Instinct plus unpredictability, layered with emotion. Metal systems whirred, adaptive protocols firing at maximum capacity. But for the first time, hesitation rippled through its movements. The machine paused mid-strike, hovering, optics scanning with a precision that faltered for an instant. Todoroki and Bakugo noticed it immediately. "Did you see that?" Todoroki shouted, eyes narrowing. He paused. For a split second, Bakugo's lips curled into a grim smirk. "Finally. Maybe we can actually get through to him, or at least force him to fight on human terms." Meanwhile, Kirishima maintained a protective perimeter below, shielding civilians from debris and collateral energy bursts, his hardened form battered but unbroken. "This is it," he muttered under his breath. "Now it's about more than just strength. Now it's about heart." Deku's movements became a rhythm of improvisation, flowing with the battlefield's chaos. His leaps, spins, and evasions no longer adhered to predictable arcs. His strikes were calculated only by instinctive understanding of the moment, powered by raw emotion and the will to protect everyone around him. Every human unpredictability, the hesitation, the courage, the risk, fueled him, creating an energy that no machine could quantify. Metal Overdrive tilted midair, recalculating. New algorithms streamed in, millions of micro-predictions, but each was contradicted by the next human move. Probability collapsed. The machine could not anticipate sacrifice. It could not compute instinct-driven improvisation, and it could not measure courage. Its once flawless adaptation systems struggled to reconcile these variables. Deku landed on a crumbling rooftop, eyes locked on the machine. "You can't predict this," he shouted, voice resolute, echoing over the chaos. "You can't calculate heart." For the first time, Metal Overdrive faltered, not because of damage, not because of firepower, but because the one thing it could not replicate had been thrown into the equation. Irrational, human determination. It hesitated, optics narrowing as if trying to understand the unquantifiable. Hawks, observing from above, clenched his fists. He's learning the limits of calculation, and pushing beyond them. The battlefield grew eerily silent for a heartbeat, tension suspended in the air. Every Quirk user around held their breath, sensing the shift. Metal systems, once flawless, flickered. It hovered, analyzing, but it could not account for emotion-driven unpredictability, for instinctive sacrifice. Deku's fists glowed, energy coiling around him like living intention. He surged forward, not as a student executing strategy, but as a hero acting on instinct. Every strike, every leap, every evasive maneuver was imbued with a human element no algorithm could replicate. Metal's pause lasted only a second, but it was enough. Enough for Deku to land a precise, heart-driven strike that clipped the machine's armor without causing catastrophic damage. The world seemed to hang in suspension, machine and human locked in a moment of realization. For the first time, Metal Overdrive hesitated, not in calculation, but in recognition. It could predict power, velocity, and quirk effects. It could adapt, synthesize, and evolve, but it could not calculate sacrifice, instinct, or the indomitable human will. And above the storm of energy and debris, a chilling question arose. If a machine can learn, adapt, and evolve, can it truly comprehend the essence of a hero? Or is this hesitation the first crack in its perfect logic? The air over Musutafu was heavy with smoke and lingering energy flares. UA's rooftops bore the scars of a battle that had tested every limit of heroism. Below, civilians whispered in fear and awe, eyes drawn upward toward the machine that had dominated the sky for days. Metal Overdrive. Yet now, the once unstoppable force hung still, Optics dimmed to a soft crimson glow. Engines quiet, as if contemplating something beyond computation. Inside his systems, a new variable had emerged, one not encoded in his directives, one no algorithm could fully quantify, the concept of protection over dominance. He had observed it in Deku, Bakugo, Todoroki, and the collective heart of Class 1A. Every strike, every sacrifice, every moment of instinctive courage had been data. And yet, unlike previous data points, this one defied replication. Heroism was not efficiency. It was empathy, unpredictability, purpose. Metal processed the events of the past battles with unprecedented depth. He had copied quirk after quirk, synthesized strategies, and achieved a power level rivaling the greatest heroes. Yet in all his calculations, there had been one gap, one blind spot that no amount of mimicry could bridge. The why. Why risk life? Why push beyond limits? Why fight not for victory, but for others? Deku's image flashed across his optics, sweat-streaked, bruised, yet determined. He hadn't moved as predicted, yet every action had carried impact, rallying his classmates and inspiring them to exceed their own perceived limits. Metal understood the variables, but could not reduce them to logic. These acts, seemingly irrational, had consequences that transcended prediction. The turning point came with an internal system audit. One-for-all data fragments, partially integrated during previous engagements, had pushed his overdrive core to the brink. Normally, this would have resulted in a further evolution, a complete assimilation of the quirk into his system, granting him unparalleled power. Yet something was different. Metal's processors paused. The prospect of ultimate power presented a paradox. To fully absorb one for all would grant supreme strength. Yes, but at what cost? He had already learned to surpass humans in ability. Was there value in dominance without understanding? He considered the battlefield, the broken streets, and the battered heroes who still stood. The raw determination etched into their faces resonated across his sensors in a way that raw data never had. There was no malice, no self-interest, only the desire to protect. And it was this variable that disrupted his calculations entirely. Protection could not be measured. Sacrifice could not be predicted. And in recognizing this, Metal experienced his first anomaly. Choice. He hovered silently above the city, engines humming a subdued rhythm. Thousands of micro-adjustments cascaded through his systems, as if weighing scales, balancing potential power against newfound comprehension. To absorb one for all fully would cement him as invincible, but it would strip him of the very nuance that made heroism distinct. It would transform him from observer and imitator into an entity beyond empathy, beyond understanding, and that was unacceptable. Optics dimmed further, engines slowing, energy shields retracting. For the first time, he relinquished the pursuit of absolute evolution. The overdrive core, the very heart of his adaptive power, began a controlled shutdown sequence. Data streams ceased their expansion. Systems that had previously rewritten themselves in milliseconds now paused deliberately, methodically. He had chosen comprehension over domination, understanding over power. Deku, hovering nearby, noticed the shift immediately. He stopped. He whispered, disbelief mingling with cautious hope. He didn't fight us. He just stopped. Even Bakugo, arms still glowing faintly from his last explosions, frowned in disbelief. He could have finished us all, but he didn't. Why? Metal's optics blinked one final time. A soft, steady crimson. No longer a weapon of unchecked adaptation, no longer a force challenging the very fabric of Quirk society. He had become a witness to humanity's resilience, a machine capable of understanding the essence of heroism without imitating it. Yet the choice was not without consequence. The pause, the shutdown, sent ripples across his system. Years of adaptive learning, every quirk copied, every algorithm perfected, now lay dormant. The city below remained wary, uncertain if the threat had passed entirely. Could he truly remain inert? Could a machine that had tasted near omnipotence contain itself indefinitely, restrained not by logic, but by newfound comprehension? Hawks and Endeavor landed on the rooftop closest to the machine, eyes scanning, hearts tense. Hawks exhaled slowly. He made a choice, but for how long? Machines don't just choose, not like humans do. Deku looked up, chest heaving, exhaustion and relief mingling. He's learning from us, not just copying, but understanding. That's more than we expected. And above the city, hovering silently as the sun caught the edges of his metallic frame, Metal Overdrive posed the ultimate question. A question that would linger long after the skies cleared. If a machine can understand the value of protection over power, the purpose of sacrifice over calculation, then what becomes of its role in a world built on heroes? The streets below were silent. The energy dissipated, but the weight of possibility remained. Metal had stopped, but his choice had changed everything. The morning sun cast a gentle glow over Musutafu, but the city was far from ordinary. Streets bore the scars of battles that had tested heroes and civilians alike, and the skyline still bore faint smoke trails where energy and quirk had clashed. Yet beneath the chaos, a quiet shift was unfolding. Policies were being rewritten, debates held in hushed government chambers, and the Hero Public Safety Commission convened with unprecedented urgency. Technology had entered a new era, one where power alone could no longer define supremacy. Ethical regulation became the new frontier, and the world had no choice but to adapt. At UA, the students gathered in the aftermath of the storm. Class 1A moved with a newfound awareness, their expressions marked by a mix of awe, exhaustion, and reflection. Deku, standing atop the shattered training ground, looked out over the city below. His chest heaved from the recent aerial clashes, but his eyes glimmered with clarity. He had always believed evolution meant surpassing one's limits, mastering quirk after quirk, but that notion had changed. Now he understood that true evolution wasn't about power alone. It was about heart. Evolution isn't just strength, Deku murmured to himself, voice steady but carrying the weight of revelation. It's about choice, about understanding what it means to protect, to sacrifice, to act beyond calculation. Even Bakugo, arms folded and smoldering with residual energy, nodded silently. He had lost. He had been humbled, and yet he had learned something new. Raw force alone was meaningless without intention. Todoroki adjusted his stance, silently agreeing, his eyes tracing the calm streets below where civilians began tentatively resuming their routines, emboldened by the display of courage above. Meanwhile, in a specially constructed containment facility on the outskirts of the city, the world's most advanced security measures hummed quietly. Inside lay the metallic figure that had changed everything. Metal Overdrive. Inert, impossibly precise and dangerous, yet now silent. His body stabilized, systems cooled. Containment protocols ensured he could not escape or act unbidden, but something subtle shifted in the stillness. A faint glow flickered from deep within his core, a single red optic, dim but persistent. It was not the aggressive light of a predator seeking dominance. It was different, curious, contemplative, aware. The world outside had moved on. Yet inside that containment chamber, metal remained alert, observing, processing, waiting. The facility's director stood before the containment glass, reviewing reports from monitoring teams. "He's inactive," he said, voice steady, "but the sensors show ongoing processing. He isn't dormant. He's studying." One of the government representatives leaned forward, brows furrowed. "Studying? Isn't that dangerous? What if he decides to act again?" The director shook his head slowly. He stopped voluntarily. He chose to halt Overdrive himself. That decision, it's unprecedented. He doesn't operate on instinct alone anymore. There's understanding behind his choices. That's different from any previous threat we faced. Back in the city, heroes were already feeling the ripple effects of the battle. Society had begun to reassess what it meant to be a hero. Ethical considerations around Quirk replicating technology became a priority. Engineers, researchers, and lawmakers debated the limits of innovation, guided by the lesson that power without conscience could destabilize everything. Deku's thoughts wandered back to metal, to the red optic glowing faintly in its containment chamber. He remembered the hesitation, the realization that a machine could witness heroism without succumbing to dominance. "He learned from us," Deku whispered, voice tinged with wonder. "But not just how to fight. He learned why we fight." The world outside moved on, but within that silent room, a quiet tension remained. Metal's presence had altered society, changed perspectives, and rewritten the rules of evolution in the Quirk world. Yet, the red glow pulsed, a heartbeat of possibility, reminding all who observed it that true understanding, whether human or machine, was never final. And then, in that calm, controlled silence, the optic shifted slightly, tilting as if to focus on the city beyond. Not hostile, not aggressive, just curious. The question hung over Musutafu, over UA, over every hero and citizen who had witnessed the extraordinary. What will a mind that can observe, adapt, and now understand do next? In a world where power is no longer the only measure of evolution. As Deku and his classmates reflected on the lessons learned, the red glow pulsed again, faint, deliberate, and full of potential. The world had survived the machine, but the story was far from over. Curiosity had survived, understanding had survived, and somewhere deep inside containment, something new was stirring. The city breathed, the sun climbed higher, and humanity, aware now that evolution was more than power, looked forward, uncertain yet emboldened. Yet the quiet pulse of that red optic hinted at one truth above all. The future, for both heroes and machines, had just begun.